Well, freelancing is a trap. It's a trap that makes you a glorified employee, because if you're still charging low prices, dealing with nightmare clients and grinding out for a few thousand a month, then you're basically working a glorified 9 to 5. And I know this because when I was 18, I was a freelancer. I did social media marketing for restaurants in my area, went to online platforms like Upwork and Fiverr, and I got to a few $1,000s a month, doing anything and everything they were asking me to do, which was my first real taste of money online. But I still felt like a glorified employee because clients disrespected my time, paid me peanuts, and practically expected the world. But fast forward a few years, I now run a business that makes me over 7 figures a year, and I can actually work less whilst earning more, and this is a view that I get to wake up to on an average Monday morning. So in this video, I'm going to explain to you how you can break out of that trap. I'm going to run you through the 3 biggest things that are actually keeping you trapped on the hamster wheel, such as struggling to make yourself stand out, being undervalued, and being paid based on the time that you put in, and explain how to change that for good. Now, the first thing that's keeping you trapped is the fact that you're struggling to stand out in a crowded market, which basically means that you are just automatically blending into everybody else who sells a similar service to you. And that's a massive problem, because that is going to keep you trapped in a cycle of competing amongst everybody else in order to actually just obtain a client, let alone charge a good price, make sure your service over delivers, and then, increase the LTV. And actually, once you figure out how to stand out within a crowded market, everything else becomes a bit of an easier runway from there. You can then charge higher prices. You can then increase the value of your service. You can then outsource to a team, and it allows you to actually build a business. So let me run you through a few of the ways in which you can actually stand out. Whether it's a crowded market or not, you still need to learn how to stand out. Now, the first thing that's going to help you stand out is actually quite simple, but it's just getting off freelance platforms. Because if you're currently on freelance platforms, or you've been on freelance platforms, you know how difficult the competition is. You know that in order to actually get a job, get a gig, you have to compete amongst a bunch of other people, because someone posts a job on these platforms, you then have to apply to that job, and it's impossible to distinguish you from an employee when you are literally applying for jobs. Because you've got to understand is that when you're on freelance platforms, the dynamic is instantly off. Again, when they're posting jobs and you're applying to that job, you are instantly seen down here, whilst the person who's hiring you, the employer, is instantly seen up here, because they are interviewing you, which means you are instantly beneath them. And it is incredibly hard to charge a good amount of money for your service when the dynamic is like this, which means that it's your job to shift the dynamic like this, where it's business owner and business owner, not business owner and freelancer. Because you've got to remember that when these clients are actually deciding who they want to hire to complete the job that they posted for, they are basically just whittling through a bunch of applicants, right? So it's incredibly difficult for them to see you and go, this person is incredibly valuable, when you're on the same marketplace as everybody else who isn't valuable. Because let's be honest, on these platforms, you are competing against an awful quality of other freelancers. The reason being is because for any new freelancers, they start jumping on platforms like this, and they are competing with you when it comes to them trying to get the same job that you are. So again, you need to change the dynamic from that and that to this and this, where you are both level, you are both business owners, not business owner and freelancer. But the unfortunate thing is that these freelance platforms don't actually give you the ability to do that. I mean, sure, you can post a really nice cover letter where you really big yourself up and you try and make yourself stand out, but nonetheless, the environment at which people are hiring you in is the same environment at which they could hire a brand new beginner, which means the ultimate goal here is to position yourself as a business owner as per to a freelancer. So actually, the first step, funnily enough, to break out the freelancer trap is to stop being a freelancer altogether. Position yourself as a business owner, because as a freelancer, you are the entire business, whereas a business owner, you actually control the entire business. You run the business. You're a CEO, and that is the ultimate goal. That's a position you want to put yourself in. And the second way to stand out in a crowded market is to actually develop what's known as a USP. Now, a USP is a unique selling point, which is basically what it says on the tin. What is unique about you and your service and the way in which you deliver your service, or the way in which you help your clients, that is different to everybody else? For example, if I were to take you as a freelancer and you had your service, and I were to line you up amongst a bunch of other freelancers, why would someone pick you out of that line of people as per to somebody else? What is there different about your service? And it can't really just be, I'm better at delivering the service, or I do it faster, or I do it more efficiently. A USP has to be something that massively makes you stand out. What you need, in all honesty, is a wow factor, something that makes someone look at you and your service and go, wow, that is the one I want to go for. That is the person I want to work with because of XYZ reason. And the easy way to identify what that wow factor be is basically just to look at the industry and look at what most people do and what most people are missing out on. Look at what you're doing. What are you doing that is blending into what other people are doing? And how can you do something differently? Or how can you add something additional onto your service that make people look at you and go, that's pretty cool. That's pretty impressive. That is the kind of person I would want to work with. Or funnily enough, in other ways, in order to stand out in a market, you literally just have to stand out. That is quite literally it. And the third way to stand stand out in a crowded market is to actually start to market yourself differently. Because marketing is literally half the job of you as a business owner to actually get clients. And if you're marketing yourself the same way that everyone else is marketing themselves, which is on these platforms and in super basic ways, it's incredibly hard for someone to pick you over other people. Even if you have an amazing USP, even if your service is 1,000 times better than other people's service, it's hard to actually show that if you're marketing yourself on the same avenue, the same platforms as everybody else. And the best way, honestly, the best way you can market yourself differently, and I have a bias against this because of what I do, but it is through content. Because through content, you can instantly show your true colors. You can show your USP, you can show your uniqueness, you can explain why you're different through the actions that are shown on videos and images or whatever way you want to market yourself. But nonetheless, content is such a fantastic tool because, again, you are either on a platform where people are literally picking and choosing you, or content allows you to get in front of their face before they even maybe knew that they actually needed the service that you provide. But because you're creating content, because you're talking about how amazing your service is and how much it can benefit people, that is what makes them see it and go, oh my God, I need that. I didn't even realize I needed that, but I definitely need that. And that's what you're aiming for with content. In fact, I have other videos on my account around content, around how I grew to 100K a month through building a personal brand. So you can go and check that out with more information on this, but you most definitely have to market yourself differently. No matter which way you're doing it, content is an absolute killer, but you've got to do it in a different manner. So that is part one. That is how to stand out within the market that you're playing in and actually be different and unique. So let us move on to step two. Now, the second trap that you'll find yourself in as a freelancer that you have to break out of if you want to scale, make more money, financial freedom, all that good stuff, is that you have to stop being undervalued, because that is a massive problem that I see a lot of freelancers have. And in fact, it's a massive problem that I had when I was a freelancer. It was incredibly difficult for me to value myself or even just price my services higher when I wasn't able to make myself stand out in a manner which made me be perceived more valuable, if that makes sense. So you've got to stop being undervalued if you want to break out of the trap. And there's a few different ways you can do that. The first, quite obvious one, but incredibly effective one, is to just increase the value perception of your service overall. Because the thing you've got to understand is that the money that you make is completely equal in correlation to the value that you provide. Which means that if you're struggling to provide enough value, then you will struggle to make more money. But it's not only that. Value comes from perception. It's not necessarily just what it says on paper, but it's actually how valuable you come across. And if I wanted to come across more valuable with my service, in fact, to come across as more valuable with my service, to make sure that my service came across as more valuable, one of the ways I did that is literally just by increasing the price of my service. Because value is completely based on perception. You know, what someone perceives as valuable is determined by whatever price tag is on it. You know, if I had a bottle of water here and an identical one here, but this one was $100 and this one was $1, you don't know why, but you instantly think that this one is much more valuable because it's much more expensive, regardless of what you know about the bottle. Same thing goes over book. If I had two completely blank books and this one was $100 and this one was $1, you don't know why yet, but you think this one's going to be more valuable just because of the price tag that's on it. And it's funny because people are typically scared to raise the prices of their service because they think they're not valuable enough, but they're not valuable enough because they haven't raised the price of their service. So a little exercise that you can walk away with straight away from this video is, I guarantee that if you just walk away today and you maybe not double, but increase the price of your service by 50%, nothing will change in terms of the amount of clients that you sign, but you'll just make more money per client. And that's a guarantee. And if that doesn't work for you, come back to this video, leave me a comment, tell me you hate me, and I'll personally mentor you for free until you get to the point where you want to get to. I don't know. All I'm trying to say is that increasing the price of your service will dramatically affect how much money you make, like that. And the second way you can actually increase the value perception is by increasing the value of the outcome itself, which actually kind of moves me on to my next thing quite nicely. My next step in order to make sure that you're not undervalued anymore, which is just to make sure that your service produces a tangible result as per to a convenience-based result. And what I mean by that is that you probably fall into the trap of your service being completely convenience-based, right? And you have two different options. Your service can either be convenience-based, which basically means that your service is like a nice to have. It's something that, sure, is valuable, but is it going to change the result that this company is able to produce? Probably not. It's like something that my service was. It's like managing social media. Like managing social media is a convenience because it doesn't necessarily produce a result, but it does take away the annoyance of someone else having to do it, right? If there's a business owner and they want to hire you to manage their social media, they're not doing it because they think that you're going to generate them tens of thousands of dollars of revenue. They're just doing it so that they don't have to do it themselves. So you can either have a convenience-based service or you can have a results-based service. Now, you really want to land on the edge of having a results-based service, because having a results-based service means that your service actually produces income for the business, it produces revenue for the business, and therefore they're going to be much more willing to pay you more money as a result, right? So let's say, for example, that your service was graphic design and you helped brands create cool graphics for their social media, and that was your whole thing. Now, that's one way to sell the service, and that would be considered a convenience-based service because you're providing a convenience, not necessarily a result. However, if you were to take the same service of creating graphics, but you were to help brands create better advertisement creatives, right? So graphics that they can run as ads to make money, that's instantly now a results-based service all of a sudden. You are now producing a direct result for that brand, meaning you are making them money. And when you make them money, they will be willing to pay you more money as a result. So again, the same skill, graphic design. This will be a convenience, making social media content. This will be a result, making advertisement creatives, right, where they can actually run them as ads and make money. So you want to make sure that your service produces a tangible result, something that, number one, they can measure and actually see a direct improvement within their business. But number two, ideally it makes them money, because if they're making more money as a result of your service, they're going to be willing to pay you more money so they can keep making more money. It's super simple when you think about it like that, but it's so important. And the third way that you can stop being undervalued is by charging based on performance. Now, charging based on performance basically just means that your service has to produce a result, because if you're charging based on performance, it basically means that you are making the company more money and you are taking a portion of that. So again, you could take the same service I mentioned before with graphic design, but if you are helping the company make, I don't know, let's say they were going from $10,000 a month generated from ads, and now they're at $20,000 a month generated from ads because you help them create better graphics that perform better and make more money. You can charge 20% of the revenue that they generate from that difference that you've made, which number one means you're going to make more money by default, but number two, it means that you are seen as much more valuable because your service has had a direct result on how much money they've made. And of course, charging based on performance is a really nice, no risk way for the brand to work with you because they lose nothing, they risk nothing. And of course, a really nice thing about charging based on performance is it makes your earning potential unlimited, because the amount of money that you make is completely tied to how good of a result that you can produce. And of course, that's going to allow you to potentially make much more money than you would if you were just charging a flat fee of $1,000 a month for your entire service, you know? So those are the three ways that you can stop being undervalued and, of course, in brackets, underpriced. Increase the value perception of your service by increasing the price of your service and increasing the value of the outcome. Number two, produce a tangible result, not a convenience-based result, but a tangible income revenue-based result. And number three, charge based on performance, because it makes your earning potential unlimited. Cool. So let's move on to the last and final thing that allows you to escape the freelancer trap. So the final and biggest thing that I see that people mess up with when it comes to being a freelancer, that keeps them in that freelancer trap, that freelancer cycle, is only making money in relation to how much time they put in, which basically means that the money they make as a freelancer is completely equal to the time that they put in. And this is obviously a massive problem because of the fact that you only have 24 hours in a day. And if you're working 24 of those hours, which is practically impossible, the only way to make more money is to increase your hourly rate. And there's going to be a limit of whatever someone's willing to pay you on an hourly rate. So there's a few ways that we can actually make sure that you're detaching your time from your money that you're making, or in other words, the money that you're making from the time that you're putting in, so that you can make an unlimited amount. So let's dive into them. So the first thing is similar to a point that we made before, which is actually to charge based on the result that you produce as per to how long it takes you. And there's a few reasons that this works so well. Number one is, of course, that it's no risk for the actual company you're working with, which makes it a much easier sale. Because if I'm saying to you, hey, you're a company and I can make you XYZ amount of money and you don't pay me anything until I make you that money, cool. What do you lose as a company? Practically nothing. Sure, there may be a bit more time you have to put into certain areas, but apart from that, it's pretty much no risk. And of course, being paid based on the time that you put in actually penalizes you if you're good at your service, right? Because if it doesn't take you that long to produce a fantastic result and you're being paid based on the time that you put in, then you are told off for being good almost, right? You're told off for doing it quickly and efficiently. And there's loads of different ways that you can do this, right? Let's say, for example, that your service is actually building websites. That's what you do. You build websites for a service. Now, to actually build that website, you can either be paid based on the time that it takes you or the result of actually having that website produced. And if you're very good at building websites very quickly, very efficiently, then time is not an option, because if it takes you 5 hours to build a website, then you're only going to be paid based on those 5 hours. But actually the result that a company will get from having a website being built is worth a lot of money, especially if the company that you're building it for generates a lot of revenue through their website, right? So always, always, always charge based on the result. Never, ever based on the time that it takes you to produce a result. And the second way you can detach the money that you generate from the time that you put in is using leverage. Now, leverage come in a few different forms, shapes, and sizes. One form of leverage, for example, is softwares. Another form of leverage is people, or in other words, a team. Or in a much more modern day, another form of leverage is AI. Now, using any form of leverage, whether it's softwares, whether it's a team, whether it's an AI, allows you just purely to scale, because it means that you can take on more clients at once, because it isn't so demanding, or each client isn't so demanding of your time, and it allows you to actually scale pretty much vertically as a result, especially when you can start to work backwards and really understand what it takes to deliver for a client. Now, your service could be anything. I have no idea talking to you through the screen, but if you can identify that, okay, in order to build a website utilizing softwares, a team, or AI, or whatever that may be, I can actually build a website in a quarter, a third of the time that it normally takes me. That's amazing, because that means I can take on, let's say if it's a quarter, 4 times the amount of clients I would have previously been able to take on if I use leverage. Obviously, providing that you can still produce the same quality of result and this kind of thing, but it's such a powerful tool that many freelancers don't use. They think that because they're a freelancer, they have this limiting belief in their head that it has to just be them. They have to be the tool. They have to be the business. It has to just be their manpower going into the task to actually produce the result, or it's unfair for some reason, or it doesn't make sense. It's not freelance like. Use tools, use leverage, use a team, build a team behind you, use AI. I'll give you an example. One of my best students inside my training program, Samuel, he joined me as a freelance video editor, and he had this exact same problem where, well, number one, he actually was struggling to get clients, but when he did get clients, he was massively struggling to actually deliver for those clients in order to scale, because he realized that for every client he brought on, that would take an extra 4 or 5 hours of his day away to edit these videos and piece all together his services. So what we did is we started using leverage. We started making him actually hire out a team, and then he built a team, and he identified that for each and every single person that he brought onto his team, they could take over 2 clients worth of work, and that allowed him to scale massively, because for every 2 clients he brought on, he would hire another team member, and he would train them up, and he could get 2 more clients, and he would keep doing it over and over and over again until he got to, way past 10K per month, and obviously now manages a team of 5-6 people, but he can still run the business. He's not working in the business, he's working on the business. So using leverage is such an undervalued way to actually scale your business. And the third way that you can detach the money that you make from the time that you put in is actually just working with a higher value market. Now, what do I mean by working with a high value market, right? There are different markets that will take the same service that you can provide to them, and they will get entirely different results out of the service that you provide. So let's say, for example, that you have 2 companies. You have 2 e-commerce companies, right? And one of those companies, let's say, makes 100K a year. Let's say the other one makes $1 million a year. If you have a service, whatever it may be, that can increase a company's revenue by 10%, these 2 companies are going to get entirely different results from the same service that you can provide. This company at the bottom, the 1 million company a year, the company that makes 1 million in revenue, their 10% lift or 10% increase in revenue is entirely different to the company that makes 100K a year, which means that your service to this company that makes $1 million a year is much more valuable than the service to a company that makes 100K a year, which means that if you want to make more money, just work with a higher value market. Hopefully you're kind of picking up what I'm putting down, but these are such simple things that you can change within your business as a freelancer that will massively transform how much money you make and how you're able to scale. If you want to learn directly from me how you can do all this, considering I work with freelancers and literally help them take their skill set and turn it into a 6-figure a year business and more, check the link out down below. Because if you are a freelancer, if you're a one-man business and you're kind of in a similar situation where you're struggling to scale and all this kind of stuff, I guarantee I can help you change your life, not only your life, but your business, because there's a lot more where this came from. Cheers. See you in the next one.